everybody. This is Jen Kleinhens.
And I'm Rob Vose.
And you're listening to another episode of Everybody Hates Your Brand, a podcast where we talk about our thoughts and opinions on marketing, from customer experience to brand and everything in between. Join us today as we talk about working abroad, the good, the bad, and the confusing. Right, so I think a good question you're probably thinking is, why now? Why are we talking about working abroad when barely anyone can travel?
Yeah, I've barely left the house.
Yes, I don't think we've left the house in about 9 months. Well, why now? I think, to be fair, as an American who's worked in 2 foreign countries at this point, I get a lot of emails from alma maters, from places I've gone to school, where they've recommended that people who want to work abroad reach out to me. And I'll be honest, I've started to get those emails again. So I believe that there is some pent-up demand due to COVID.
I think that's fair.
I think with the vaccine on the horizon, maybe people are thinking, okay, this is something that I can probably accomplish or do.
Yep.
And also, like I said, a lot of people in my networks that I see are still considering, they're still contacting me, and they're still taking jobs abroad.
Yes. So
it's still happening.
And I know, if there are people who I've worked with who've moved to New York recently and various bits and pieces like that.
Mm-hmm.
It still happens. But I think you're right about the pent up demand thing. I think the holidays, but also getting away from the place you've been stuck almost.
Yeah.
It's like, I've got to get out and do something different.
Well, I also think if you're American, between Trump and the way that the country's handled COVID, I feel like a lot of people just have to get out.
Maybe.
They need a change.
Absolutely. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So we are going to cover a few different topics here. Obviously, we can only speak from our experience. I have, as an American person, worked now in Sydney, Australia, and am working in London, although we live outside of London.
Yes.
And
I, as a Brit, worked in Australia.
Yes. And we did kind of go back and forth on, because obviously, I have friends that have, learned Italian and went to, work in Italy, and that's amazing.
I would hope if they learned Italian, it would be Italy they went to, otherwise it would be a bit...
Yeah, so it's worth saying that although we did not, at least I can speak for myself, although neither one of us had to, learn a foreign language and go, do business in that language, which I think it has a whole other host of complications and issues and challenges, I would argue that Australia and the UK do speak a very different language.
Massively so.
As Winston Churchill, common culture separated by...
Do you mean Australia or...
Separated by common language. I'm going to butcher that quote.
It wasn't the US and the UK, not Australia and the
Yeah, but same deal.
It's the same thing. It's funny, the language thing, I think there's a sense of complacency.
Yeah,
you feel like you get... I mean... I'll earn our not safe for work rating right here. So an old friend of mine, I shall name her, Emma Tedesque, worked in Australia for a while for Vodafone, and she was getting to their first day or something, and sorry Emma if I'm butchering this, and she said that she got to work and she was struggling to find the best way to get to work. The best route.
The best path.
Route, as Americans would say, or route we would say.
We say both, but yes.
Yeah, to route in Australia...
ROOT.
...is to have sex.
It is the F word, basically.
To bang, yes.
Kind of. It's a curse, right? You wouldn't say it at work.
And so when she walked into the meeting and said, I was struggling to find a really good route to work, on the way to work.
Bum, bum, bum.
Everyone found that hilarious.
Yes.
So there's more... It's weird. You get complacent because you can speak, you can converse with people.
There's subtleties,
but there are subtleties that are really quite stark in certain ways.
Yeah. So I think that maybe the first thing we should talk about is why both of us decided to work abroad and why that was something that we both wanted to do.
Would you like to start?
I mean, I guess we can. I think for me, it was interesting because I left the U.S. and moved to Sydney to work. Oh God, in late 2016. Mm-hmm. So obviously, when I was at the airport and I gave the one-way ticket and you have to show your visa and the whole thing.
The one-way ticket is without question the weirdest experience.
It's very scary.
It's so odd.
But when I would show the ticket to the airline stewards and things, or not the airline stewards, but the people at the gate, I would inevitably get a comment, because Donald Trump's president, right? That really had nothing to do with it. It was a happy coincidence. And now looking back 4 years later, I think we have the benefit of, oh, yeah, this is good timing.
And with all due respect, Australia is not Tony Abbott, Scott Morrison, not exactly a shining beacon of.
It has its own challenges. But the point being is that I did not move because of Donald Trump, and I think people bring that up a lot given the timing.
Yeah.
But for me, like having, worked in the U.S. and, I mean, being in a military family, I think we had opportunities to like move to different countries and try different things. My parents, for one reason or another, never wanted to take up those opportunities. And so as a kid, even, I saw the opportunity to kind of go abroad and like experience a different culture, like, specifically Germany, because that's where a lot of Air Force families and things will go through that rotation. But we did not. So when that opportunity passed us by, I think it kind of planted the seed of, I would really like to experience another culture and like see, what's out there. And I think as an American, I'm not first or second generation, but I'm pretty close in terms of people coming from different countries and parts of my family having been there and parts coming over. But we're like a nation of immigrants. So there's something fascinating to me about going to a different country and trying on, like a new way of living, a new culture, a new way of being, and sort of having grown up moving every, couple years, basically. I think for me, I felt like I had a good base of flexibility and like the ability to kind of, try something new. So for me, it made a lot of sense. It was something I'd always wanted to do.
And would you say you were an outlier?
In terms of work,
I mean, I don't want to wish to stereotype an entire nation of 300 and odd million people, but...
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a lot of, like, living in Europe, I think there's a lot of guff, and it's really popular, I think, to kind of rag on Americans. Oh, nobody owns a passport, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It is a huge-ass country, okay? It is 365 million plus. It is all sorts of different cultures. I mean, it's huge. So, no offense to the Europeans in the room or who are listening, but, like... If they spoke a different language in North Carolina than they do in South Carolina, we would all speak like 15 different languages. But we don't. It's a big country. And many people are just satisfied, I think, to move from like San Francisco to New York
Houston,
to do
it. Whatever, yeah.
Yeah, to try on that kind of culture.
I think we forget that. I think Europeans especially forget that.
It's huge. So, like, just step back slightly. I do think a lot of Americans want to work abroad, but to be honest with you, like, we don't have the benefit of a Commonwealth. So it is difficult. So Commonwealth being like Canada, Australia, England,
New Zealand, anywhere that's ex-empire that we're still on speaking terms with.
Yeah, we kicked you guys out, so we don't have a great relationship at the moment.
Says the girl currently drinking a cup of tea. I'm just saying. Anyway.
But point being is that I think a lot of Americans would really like to, but for one reason or another, it becomes really difficult. And I think talent exchange and visas and look, this is a perception I think a lot of Americans have, which is America is the best place, is the best country, there's the most opportunity.
Why would I go anywhere else?
Why would I want to go?
That's why I was asking whether you felt like you were more
else.
of an outlier doing something different.
Yes and no. I think I'm an outlier in the fact that like I pulled the trigger and did it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get to the precipice and kind of go, I can't really give up every single thing because it's really scary. Or
scary.
The ones who do it, I think will do it for 2 or 3 years and then kind of come back and that's fine.
Yeah. My experience, I had, as I said before, I knew people who lived and worked in Australia. I've been a couple of times on holiday, had loved being in Australia. It was one of my favourite places. And I'd never done that. A lot of people here do the travelling thing. They'll go backpacking around Europe or they'll go backpacking to Australia.
Well, you guys have a gap year. A lot of
all
people
that sort of stuff.
Too,
Some people
right?
take gap years, but I'd never had, and I was always too scared to just jump on what's called like a work sort of holiday visa, which is like a year long, and you go and you've got a certain, you can then try and latch on to a proper job and then get a different type of visa. I was always too much of a wuss for that, and I never really wanted to do the travelling thing. I was never really that bothered by it, but I'd always said when I was younger that I wanted to work in Australia, having visited there. And time had gone on, and I was 37, so giving away my age now, when I moved in 2014, and the opportunity came up. And one of the questions you were talking about earlier when we were discussing this podcast is, how do you get abroad? I'm imagining one of the biggest ways is somebody who's out there.
Sorry, in my mind, it's how do you get abroad?
No, not abroad. I'm not a New Yorker.
That's a whole different podcast. That's a whole different podcast.
Sorry for my American accent then. But I knew somebody out there, a lovely person called Annie Parker, who recommended me for a job, and still got to go through the motions of getting the job. And if you listen back to the interview with Simone Blakers, she was the person who hired me. I think it was episode 15, 16, something like that. And the key thing here was that I didn't have any ties. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time. I didn't have. I had a mortgage, but I didn't. My parents were in their mid-60s. Sorry, mum and dad, giving away your age. And I felt like this was the last chance I had to do it, really. Plus, I had a job offer and I had a relocation as part of that, and I had a friend out there already.
Yeah.
So it's funny. People said to me, "Oh, it's really it's impressive that you moved to Australia and it's really big." I am proud of it. But for me, it wasn't like the Hail Mary pass that a lot of people had, which is like the people who worked in my team, who moved out on a working visa and then managed to latch on to a job. That was never happening as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
Too risk averse, too British. But it was because I'd always wanted to, and an opportunity arose, and I thought, right. It was less about the job. Sorry, Simone. It was more about Sydney. And moving to Australia for me. That was the kind of like, I love this place. And I knew it would be different working there than going on holiday, and that's a big thing to explain to people. It's a very, very different world when you get up on a Monday morning and you've got to get into work and versus 2 weeks in Sydney doing whatever you liked.
Yeah.
It's a very different situation. I think that's a big learning experience. That's why I moved. I moved because it was the right time and the right opportunity, and I'm lucky as hell.
Well, and I think, I get this question a lot from a lot of people from like my alma mater. So I went to a place called the VCU Brand Center, which is very, very well respected advertising school. It's like a who's who type of place. And, a lot of people come out of this graduate program and they want to know, well, how as an American do I get a job abroad? And there's basically two ways. Because if you do decide to do it, visas will start to play a huge role in your life.
Yep.
The changes in the laws around visas, the dates with visas, the amount of time that you get, if you're sponsored with your job, like all sorts of things. But basically, there's two ways in, which is somebody and they recommend you for a role, and then usually they'll sponsor you on the visa or whatever, and then being transferred in a company. And I think it's very worth saying that a lot of people that reach out to me who want to work abroad are young. And I think for the reasons that you're saying, like they don't have kids, they're not married, they just want to try something and they want to go off and live. The problem with that is it's a little bit of a catch-22, which is that most companies do not want to sponsor you unless you're of a seniority level that, because they have to pay a fair amount of money for you to get sponsored on a visa if it's a work visa. I think we're talking like, thousands of pounds
I'm not sure.
in the UK.
I never found out.
It's a fair amount of money. And they don't want to do that if it represents like 25% of your entire salary. It doesn't make any sense to them in terms of a return on investment. And also, no offense to people who are just getting started in marketing or advertising, but you don't have skills that will separate you from other people. So in a lot of countries, they have to do a market skills test. I think in the UK, they're doing some reforms around them, so they're changing a little bit. But like in Australia and the UK, they have to say, like, this person does not have a skill set that we can find in the local population. And in the UK, before Brexit and all of that, that was really difficult because you'd really have to have a specialized set of skills because they had an entire talent pool in Europe as well. So this is something to bear in mind, is you have to be distinctive, you have to have a track record, and you have to have, I believe, a rare set of skills makes it much more possible.
I think so. And I think, I was a benefit of two things with Australia. One is it's a small, 20-something million people live in Australia, even though it's the size of the US. Yeah. And there is a well-trodden path between the UK and Australia.
There's a relationship there.
Obviously it's from the history that everybody knows about the UK and Australia. There are a lot of, if you go and work in London, you'll find a lot of Aussies, and you go and work in Sydney, you find a lot of Brits. I mean, for a long time, my team was all British.
I was shocked when I started working in Sydney, and I was like, there are like no Australian people here, basically.
The
percentage was very small.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that percentage, it's interesting. I think a lot of people do go out younger because there's less risk when you're younger. Yeah. And I think it is possible to go out. Say historically, to go out to Australia on like a working visa and then latch on. So I know people who many people who did that. Yeah. Who then got account management or whatever it was at the companies I were at. I would be interested. I don't know the answer to this, whether it's different between client versus agency, and whether it's a more well trodden path Agency side, I don't know.
I would,
but all the
I
people
get
I know
the-
who are hired, who are picked up
Yeah.
with talented people, you know.
I get the impression, at least in my experience, that you're much more likely to get picked up by an agency. And I think you're also, from an American perspective, probably much more likely to get transferred on agency side. I'm trying to think. I don't think I know anyone who has worked abroad who isn't either a consultant or in an agency.
I can.
Well,
there's a-
no, I take that back. I might know some people that worked in North America and then
I
went to
wonder if-
Mexico or Canada.
I also wonder though if it's client side, if it's more likely to be within a company structure. So I know a
do you
lot
mean?
of people at Vodafone. You know, Vodafone's got territories, and
Oh, yeah.
millions and
They'll
millions
get
of companies,
transferred.
and it's a transfer. And I wonder
Yeah.
if it client. And again, we're just talking out of turn. I don't know the answers here, but I think you're right about the visa thing. Is difficult, and obviously we're having some fun and games with that at the moment. But one of the visa things that struck me, I was out there on what was called a 457 visa in Australia, and essentially what that means is you're sponsored by your company, and you're a resident and all those kind of things. But you, if you lose your job with your company, you have a certain amount of time to get a new job and get somebody else to pick up your sponsorship. Otherwise, you're going home.
Yep. You're getting back on a plane.
And you, to a degree, have to be comfortable with having that
Yes.
sort of Damocles hanging over your head for a period of time until it's harder now, I think, in Australia, because when I moved, a 457 was a 4-year visa, and after 2 years you could apply for permanent residency, and then you're fine. And then you're in a path to citizenship if you want to do that, but you can leave your job and not get booted out of the country.
Yeah.
That's now been removed, and I understand, the visas are only 2 years now, and various bits and
I think
pieces
it's
like
worth saying that if you want to move someplace, you need to start paying attention to the politics of that country.
that. True.
Because if, for instance, you start to get somebody like Trump or,
Well, in the Liberal Party in Australia certainly have a strict stance on immigration.
Let's put it this way. If you are in a country and a more conservative party, a more nationalistic party gets in power, you can find that rules like that will change very quickly.
Absolutely, yes.
So it could be, the visa that you're on, you'll get grandfathered into it. But for instance, I'll give you an example. When I was in Australia, they were giving you 90 days. So if you lost your job or left your job, you had 90 days.
Yes, I think that's still the case.
No,
Is it not?
because when I left my role there, I had a 60-day time period, which actually I was not grandfathered into the 90 days. They were like, we change it to 60 days. That's 2 months.
They made changes literally just before you arrived, and just because
it changes very quickly.
Yeah, it changed, and there was a lot of uproar about it.
Yeah.
Different industries trying to get sort of separate rules.
Yeah, but you see something similar like in the U.S. when Trump changed the way the H-1B visas work. For a lot of people in the tech industry come in on those visas. And so I think it's just something to be aware of.
Yes.
Like if it were me, I would not be coming abroad with like 1 month's savings. I would just
have an exit strategy.
I would just you're going to do great. It'll be fine. But make sure that financially you can handle like a couple of, and exchange rates will become your best friend, because if, for instance, you are on the US dollar and you go to Australia, the US dollar is much stronger than the Australian dollar. So your savings will work for you. But if you have savings in US dollars and you move someplace like the UK, where the pound is stronger than the dollar, you're going to have less runways. So just be aware.
I think always think about your exit strategy.
Yes, totally.
Always. And that sucks. And eventually you forget it. Like, certainly after, when I made it through probation after 3 months.
Also something we don't do in the US, so worth talking about.
Yeah, so probation is basically a 3-month period at the beginning of your contract where the company, and you to a degree, have the opportunity to just say, this isn't working, we made a mistake in the hire, we're going to get rid of you with a shorter notice period than you would normally have.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing we'll get onto, I guess, employment law and notice periods. But certainly, once I got through probation, I settled in terms of my work perspective. I felt okay. They must think I'm doing okay, and eventually you forget the sort of Damocles bit to an extent. But every now and again it'll pop up, like maybe your agency loses an account, or maybe there's something, and all of a sudden you're like, or there's a new boss, or and all of a sudden you're kind of like, it does pop back into your head.
Yeah.
From time to time, it's always kind of there in the back of your mind to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, talking about sort of challenges, culture changes, like benefits of working abroad, like clearly the visa stuff is part of that. I think clearly the exchange rates are part of that as well.
Yep.
Like you can have savings in one country that you feel like you're doing great, or your salary's really big.
Yeah.
And then you go back to where you came from originally or move to a different country, and all of a sudden your financial fate has changed really quickly because of exchange rates. Sure. I think it might be worth talking about, like, from the American perspective of working abroad. I'm going to speak very broadly, and maybe say something that isn't super popular, but I have found as an American working abroad that there's a large preconceived notion that many people have about Americans and the way we are and what we do and our culture and how we behave and what our business behavior is like. And some of those are beneficial preconceived notions, but many of those are not. And you will find, as I have, that there are people who will judge you for being American, who will not like you before you open your mouth, who will not like anything that you say, who will have a confirmation bias against the culture that you come from, and they'll have thoughts, and they'll put those thoughts on you. Also, when things happen in your country, especially, I think, as an American, like if Trump, back in the days, thank God he's not the president for much longer, but when he was, if he did something stupid, everybody wants to talk to you about it. When I was in Australia, there was the Las Vegas shooting. And everybody wanted to talk about that.
Gun control and all that.
Yeah, and they always want, and I've heard people sitting across from me at desks saying things like, in Australia particularly, and sometimes in the UK as well, if there's a mass shooting in America, these Americans are so stupid. Why don't they just get rid of all the guns? And they're sitting right in front of you talking about your country like you're not from the country. What's wrong with these idiots? Like, okay, I mean, I'm sitting right in front of you, so maybe think for 2 seconds about how that might make me feel, or why this might be a more nuanced issue, or it's a point of discussion, but maybe not, all these dumb rednecks, like, like that's, guys, like, I'm right in front of you. So I think things like this, like, prepare yourself for it. Not everybody's like that. No. Most people are not. But you will occasionally run across people who don't like you because of where you're from.
There are natural stereotypes. I remember when I came back from Australia, somebody, a recruiter, was talking to me about, I'm not sure this is the case anymore, at least I hope it's not, but this idea that Aussies finish work at 5 o'clock and they're down surfing on the beach and they're, doing all those kind of stereotypes, but they're kind of work shy and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, are you insane? No. Like, I worked crazy hours at DDB. Yeah. Just got my timesheets. And I think that was an interesting one coming back from the UK. It's like, well, it's not the same here.
Yeah.
We work harder in London. Yeah. And I think that's London exceptionalism rearing its ugly head again. But I think that you're right about the American thing. You're right about, vice versa. There's definitely...
And look, I'm not just saying that, like, I'm not saying that Americans will not do that to other people from other cultures. Absolutely, I'm sure that happens.
I'm sure I'll get bad teeth joke if I worked in America.
Listen, I had when I worked at AT&T, I had a bunch of British bosses come in.
Yeah.
And nobody said one bad thing. They're all like, I could listen to them on meetings all day. Their accent is so cute. And I was like, literally, I can't think off the top of my head what a terrible stereotype about British people in America would be. I think it's mostly that you're dreamy. Like, I don't think.
Well, I mean, listen to me.
Well, you are.
But you're slightly biased in that situation.
Well, yeah.
But I think what we've got to be careful of is making it like, I wouldn't swap my time in Australia for the world.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple of different reasons for that. I'll be clear. I moved to Australia because I wanted to live in Sydney, and I wanted to live in a city, and I just loved that place, and I still do. And to be honest with you, if I could move you and my parents and everybody over to Sydney, I would still be there now. Yeah. Because
if we could move the families to Australia, I think we would live there.
There's not a day that doesn't go by
where
I don't think about what it was like in my life in Sydney and how I wish we could, lottery tonight, 175 million.
Get a beautiful, expensive house in Bondi Beach.
Absolutely. Live in Woollahra or Watson's Bay or something like that.
And that's the thing, is I don't want people to listen to this, to your point, and think like we did. I mean, I enjoyed my experience at every place that I've worked, despite the fact that some was good and some was bad, and it's always a mixed bag no matter what you do. But I wouldn't trade that time anywhere for anything, because I think it's incredibly valuable.
No. And I think I just wanted to kind of what leads you to making it. Okay, so when I first got there, a couple of things. One, you have to be lucky or you have to be very clear about what the expectations of you are. I was super lucky with Simone and the people around me who were working there at the time, that they were patient. They knew I'd never worked agency side, and it took a bit of time for me to get...
just to make this point, this is not working abroad so much as changing.
No, changing, but it was quite different in terms of like the culture and understanding the culture.
A double switch, basically.
Yeah, and understanding the brands and understanding the terminology and how different the market is in terms of how much... Australia's weird, and like the 4G and 5G network was so far ahead of the UK, but the broadband network, fixed broadband network, is appalling. So you've got this weird, there's different, and that then creates different behaviours, and I think so you've got to find somebody who's supportive and understands it's going to take time for the culture shift to happen.
I think that's a culture shift. Maybe they were more used to making.
I
mean, I'll give you an example. Like I was working on a banking brand, and in Australia, they call checking accounts current accounts. And I got dinged so many times. I had slammed stuff on tables. God, it's a current account. Like, having
I think it's the other way around, because we say current account here and it's check account over there.
No, it's definitely not, because I said checking account, which is what we call it in the US.
Yeah.
And then I would get dinged for not calling it a current account. Yeah, well, whatever. We were talking about current accounts.
So mortgages versus home loans.
And
we say mortgages here.
Yeah, and like certain people, I think were just... You're making no attempt to learn our culture, which is not true at all. I had been there for like 2 weeks, and I was just, I was in a massive change all around. So I think, this is the other point. If you're going to work abroad, try not to be the first person that's ever done that with a company, because I think there's something to be said about the company culture as well. So like where I work at the moment, we have a Chicago headquarters, we have a European headquarters, and our client is a global client. So there's a lot of back and forth. Every once in a while there's an American who transfers over, or vice versa. The Brits go over to the American office and all of that stuff. And I think that's made the culture of the company much more, I guess accepting is the wrong word, but it's much more inclusive. Like they get, you're going to have to learn some things. They give you some time to do stuff.
More of a trodden path.
Yes. And if that's not something that the company, if they're like, oh, we've never done this before, this is the first time, just set expectations.
Yeah.
Is what I would say.
Yeah. And I think the key to all this is relationships. I think building relationships with the people that you work with.
Yes.
Building
very quickly.
Relationships with, as quick as you can. I think there's some personal things lessons that I was told that I kind of stood by. So you will, not everybody maybe, but most people, you will after 3 months think, what the fuck have I done?
Why am I here? I thought that on the plane. I was like on the plane and I was going, oh my God.
And I was lucky that I had, a friend out there, and I could stay with her for a little while to begin with until I got my feet under me. And when I'm just sitting, remember, I moved out in January, and then Easter, and it's a long weekend, the Friday and the Monday off. And on my own, Annie was away, and after about I'm perfectly fine being on my own. I like living on my own, but after the sort of Saturday, I was like, I am really lonely, genuinely lonely.
Aww.
And maybe you've people at work who you become friendly with, but it takes a while for a person you get on with at work to be able to call them up and then go, hey, do you want to go out for lunch, or do you want to do something? It takes a long time for that to happen. I
think if I had to do it over again, I would live with flatmates or
roommates.
See,
I wouldn't, but I was lucky that I had Annie. If I didn't know anybody, then maybe I can understand. I can understand why you would do that.
Yeah. So I think in terms of kind of key lessons, so kind of beyond the work stuff, which I think we've kind of beaten with the stick a little bit in the culture stuff. There's lots of little differences. So like the metric system was no fun to learn. I'm now pretty good at it.
The thing is, the UK is in this stupid hybrid situation.
Yeah,
where our height and our weight, we still talk about feet and inches and stones and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And yet everything else is in metric. We're in a stupid kind of halfway house where we kind of refuse to be.
You'll start to learn how to calculate like exchange rates really quickly.
Yes.
I actually pay attention to like Forex markets and stuff now because it has a lot to do with
You will still look at prices, convert back to your British or American or whatever your home currency, and then do the math.
I do that in the grocery store.
Yeah.
Like, £5 for something. Oh my God, what is that? Like $6.50?
I did that for years. And I still did it, even towards the end.
Because I think it's weird too, because a number is a number, really.
Yeah.
It's not when they price eggs at £5 or whatever, they're not thinking this is $6.50. You know what I mean? But you are always going to think that because you're just used to like whatever. And I think it's interesting too, just like little things with the life stuff. So I know I just said we've beaten work with a stick, but as an American in Europe, or as in the UK, I guess now, the work culture, how many days you get off, like the expectation, like you still work hard, but the amount of bank holidays that everybody gets, like closing the office for Christmas, like getting 26, 28 days off.
Gardening leave was.
What's that?
Me explaining to you what gardening leave was.
Yeah, listen to this, Americans.
So gardening leave. So essentially, in this country, you obviously have a notice period, and so either you give it or your company makes you redundant for whatever reason, and it's hard to make people redundant.
Sorry, redundant being laying off, not firing.
Yeah. And it's hard to do that in this country, as it should be, frankly. And so let's say I've got a 3-month notice period. Normally, you would work that notice period, but let's say you're going to a direct competitor.
Yes.
And they don't, your existing company doesn't want you taking secrets and all that kind of stuff. They will do something called put you on gardening leave. So what gardening leave, and it's still a career objective of mine, is essentially they pay you to stay at home.
Yes.
So your existing company is paying you to stay at home during your notice period. So you're not allowed to work. You don't get involved in anything because they don't want you to take those secrets with you. So I think that's I think you're to a point about employment law and all that sort of stuff. It's funny, like America seems really extreme to me, and Australia is somewhere in the middle between America and the UK. So I had 20 days holiday in Australia versus 25 to 28 here versus 2 hours in America.
I think I had 8 days.
Yeah,
and I worked up to 8 days.
And
I
some
think they
places
started me at 6.
have if you are getting kids, there's an interesting one. If kids in certain places, statutory maternity and versus paternity and all that kind of stuff.
You get some money.
I will be completely honest. I am forever shocked at how crap, from a worker's perspective, American employment law is.
Yeah, so get this, Americans. They can't just walk in and say, like, you look funny today. You're fired. Like, they can't do that stuff.
Nope.
Believe it or not.
The only way you can get fired that easily is if you've done something completely egregious.
Hey, there's pornography on your computer that you're watching right now in the middle of a meeting. You're fired.
Something like that. They can't just
they
can't just get rid of you. And to be honest with you, that's as it should be. But from my perspective anyway.
If you're doing something wrong, then yes.
So we need to finish up this a little bit. The thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is tips for success. We've talked a few things. From a personal note, there's a couple of lessons that I learned that are really important. One, say yes to everything to begin with.
Say yes to life.
So, like, if you're at work or somebody says, hey, do you want to come out for lunch? Or, hey, do you want to do this? Or, hey, do you want to do that?
Say, yes, I would love to do that.
Bite your tongue and say yes. Unless it's, like, completely antithetical to everything you believe. Say yes to stuff. Go to lunch. See people.
Yes.
Even if you're not sure about them. Just for a bit.
Yeah.
Because you need to be out there. The second thing I would say is try and get yourself a life outside of work. So, whatever hobbies you may have.
And don't do that with expats. That is what I would tell you. Don't go to Americans in Australia meetup. Like, I think that's counterproductive. You may disagree with me, but I think that's counterproductive.
I did it based on my interest, and I just happened to meet some Brits.
Well, there was a lot of British people there.
I played golf, and I went on to a website called Meetup and met up with a couple of a mix. So some Aussies, a couple of Kiwis, and some Brits to find people to play golf with. And that, I can't explain to you how much that changed my opinion. I remember coming home for my first Christmas. I came home every Christmas because Australians, hot Christmas is weird. And I came
it's
home.
It's not weird to Australians.
I don't care. It's weird regardless.
It's weird.
What's weird is they still maintain northern hemisphere iconography like icicles and snowmen in a country that's situated 3/4 of a mile from the surface of the sun. Anyway, I've lost my train of thought now.
So what I was saying is, do not hunt out. Like, the people are very guilty. A lot of Americans that I know in the UK are like, oh, I'm going to go on Meetup and find Americans who like stuff. And then it's a bunch of American people together going like, isn't England weird? Like,
based on your interest. And the point is, like, when I got back that first Christmas, I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to be here for more than another year, maybe less. And I got out there and I met these people, and all of a sudden, because of that, my life and my appreciation of my life in Australia changed dramatically.
Yeah, because you had a social life.
And I can't explain how important that is. So whatever it is, whether it's golf, photography, walking, running, CrossFit,
and I will
whatever it is.
I will say for me, like, I didn't really have social hobbies. So, like, my hobbies are like Pilates, yoga. Like, those are places you go and don't talk to anybody and then do your thing and leave. Yeah. I was really lucky in that the people I was working with, the people I was working with like really made an effort to reach out and be welcoming to me.
Yes,
like,
yes, I did.
yes, appropriately. We were friends when we both worked together in
That's true,
Australia.
yes.
We were not dating. But yeah, lots of people who I think are just lovely, amazing people,
Yeah.
like reached out and were like, let's go do this. Let's do stuff on the weekend.
Yeah.
Let's go to brunch. Let's do all that. And that was such a help because if those people had not been reaching out to me, I would have been just like,
And I know what you
watching
mean about the
Netflix.
expat thing, but or migrants, as we should probably call them.
I just find it
But
lazy.
the thing that does help there is that they know what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew when you came out what you would be going through,
Mm-hmm.
having been through it myself. And so
Yeah.
I think that there is something to be said for people who've moved. There's a sense of camaraderie. I know what you're going through. I can potentially
There is a
support
sense of
you.
camaraderie. I feel though like I saw and see a lot of people do that because I think, to be honest, they're afraid. Like they're afraid to go outside of their comfort zone. And I'll be real, like this is something people don't talk about a lot. But when every single thing you do is outside your comfort zone, like I had to get a cell phone. I couldn't get a cell phone because I didn't have credit.
Yeah.
Like, and I
Yeah,
was like,
I
what
was
do you mean I
on-
don't have credit? Like I have not here. Not
I got
here,
put
you
on.
don't.
I got put on Annie's phone.
Well, the point being is like
Thankfully.
when every little thing is a mental challenge to you, you have to
Yes.
think, well, do people like, I'll give you an example, just like weird little things like travel agents. We were talking about this the other day. We were watching an episode of 30 Rock, an American sitcom, where they're like talking about careers that had disappeared. And the first one they say is travel agent. And this is true. In America, there are no travel agents. And when I got to Australia, there were like flight centers everywhere. They're like, well, just talk to a travel agent. I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who? And then in the UK, it's the same thing. Like a little thing like that, you would just, in the US, you just go on Google Flights and you do your thing. But culturally, it's different in Australia or the UK. You go to Flight Center. Like, what? Why would that person do that?
Absolutely. I think the
that's
key
the
thing is also, so what I would say is when you go out, be comfortable with the fact you might be going home at some point.
Oh, yes.
Until you get to a point where you can get, your visa to permanent residency or whatever the equivalent is in whatever country you're at. Be okay with the idea that you're going to go home, have an exit strategy. Because what I think that then does is it mentally frees you up to enjoy yourself.
And that's a big deal.
And that's the key thing. If you can get rid of the head noise of what happens if I go home, what happens if I lose my job, what happens if
What if they don't like me?
what's
What if
the
they
worst
like
that can
presentation?
possibly
They're
happen?
gonna send me home.
Well, you end up going home.
Yeah.
But you've got to be comfortable with that in order then, I think, to be free enough to go out and enjoy yourself.
Right.
And, I moved to one of still my favourite city on earth. Sorry, Melburnians. And had a wonderful 3.5, nearly 4 years in Sydney. So I think we've kind of talked a bit about the differences and difficulties. I think it's really important to be aware of those and you go with your eyes open. But I think if you can be comfortable, as I say, with the idea, it might not work out, you end up having to go home. It mentally frees you up to enjoy it.
Yeah,
If you spend your time scared, you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I think for me, I think that I would stand behind everything that you're saying. I think a few things to kind of keep in mind is it's incredibly valuable in that it will change the way you see yourself. It will change the way you see where you're from, and it will change the way you see the world. It will change the way you work as well. Sorry, go
No,
ahead.
go on. You carry on. I interrupted you.
No, that's all I was going to say. Is I feel like the change in perspective is incredibly valuable, and I think it's incredibly valuable for business. And I don't think it's a coincidence that you look at a lot of really successful entrepreneurs in the U.S. and Europe, especially all around, and they are immigrant people.
Yeah.
Because you see the culture you go to in a very different way through a different lens. I think in some ways more objectively. I mean, there's even a history of that of Americans coming to the UK and starting businesses and being very successful. Selfridges. Jeremy Piven in his miniseries. I mean, that's an example of one. But I think that is incredibly valuable. Now, some things I would say. We've talked about money and exchange rates and salary being different, cost of living being different, cultures being different. I think a few other things, like something to consider is when you, for instance, if I went back to the U.S. right now, people would go, oh, that's really cool. You've been working abroad for 4 years. That's really neat. Why is your title not as senior as we think you should be? So I'll give you an example. If I had this role in an agency in the US, I would be a VP, SVP, whatever.
Yeah.
Here, I am a head of, and that's fine. That's great. Like, high five. That's wonderful. But they don't have like all the same titles, so it's not completely a straight line. And some businesses will see it as missing time. They're like, well, that's great and everything, but it's not applicable because you weren't in the US, so you don't know what's been going on. So we feel like you need to be at the same level and not be progressing. So some places might see it as missing time. I think it can be really difficult to come back. I think if you can get transferred back, because that will be very, very helpful, and people will understand what you did and why it's valuable. But it's hard to
It's
come
the
back.
hardest thing.
Yeah.
I have been back beneath it's over 3 years now, which I can't quite believe. And I'm not settled in a way, like career-wise.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was talking about it the other day. Like when I was in Australia, I had a great job. People seemed to think I was doing a reasonable job. I was paid well, great city. And I was doing something different to a lot of my friends. And you feel special, for want of a better way of putting it. You feel like you're actually doing something cool with your life.
Yeah.
And then I've come back and have, bounced around a few different things and haven't settled career-wise. And I don't feel special anymore. and it's a really difficult feeling. You kind of go from thinking I'm doing something really cool to I'm failing because I'm not doing something cool anymore. And that's a really hard... I found that really hard. Really hard.
Yeah, it's difficult. But, I think in the end, like we both said it, like I wouldn't exchange my time anywhere for anything because it's incredibly valuable.
Yeah. And I think it's so cool to be able to say there's two things on my CV that people look at and go, that's cool.
Yeah.
One is that I worked at Disney for a while.
That is cool.
And the other one is that I worked in Australia.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have swapped it for the world. I wouldn't have done anything differently either. Maybe at the beginning I would have been a bit more relaxed. But yeah.
Yeah. And I would say the same. Like I think there's a lot of valuable things to get out of it. I think it's really expanded my mind. I don't want people to listen to this podcast and come away thinking like, oh no, it's terrible. They're going to fire you in any second. Everyone hates you because we're I just think that people do not talk about the downside of it enough. And I think if you're convinced that working abroad is like the thing you've got to do and you're going to do it, nothing I say is going to dissuade you. And I think for the most part, it shouldn't. I think what it should do is prepare you. It should definitely give you something to think about and a set of tools, and maybe like, and maybe we'll consider doing this at some point. Just do like a Medium article. It's like 10 things you should do the first week you're in a new country or something. Yeah. Because I didn't know, there weren't a lot of guides. And to be frank, like when you Google like expat forums and stuff, they can be helpful, but they're not, they don't really prepare you, I think, the way that they should. So that's it for this episode of Everybody Hates Your Brand. We hope you enjoyed it. You can find show notes, resources, and more episodes on our website, everybodyhatesyourbrand.com. But before we go, Rob is going to leave us on a positive note and share what he is loving right now.
It'll be really quick because the main meat of the podcast was very long. Mark Ritson celebrating his 10th anniversary writing for Marketing Week. Professor Mark Ritson, brand consultant, marketing professor. And as a result, they're doing lots of really interesting articles, sort of talking about all the articles he's written and the best ones and the funniest ones and all those kind of things. It's a real gold mine of interesting stuff, so I would recommend you have a look at it. I'll put some links in the show notes.
Well, you did it. You've wasted another perfectly good half an hour or so, or more this time, with Rob and Jen and the Everybody Hates Your Brand podcast. Again, you can find us on everybodyhatesyourbrand.com and your podcast platform of choice. Have a week.
Take great care of your vision.